r/NoSleep. Posted by u/withbite. The people on my street lost their skin. It was a sunny day outside. I was in my room wearing 2 pairs of jeans, thick woolen socks, boots, a pullover under a sweatshirt with the hood pulled up, and a mask made from a pillowcase. I wore sunglasses over the 2 small holes I had made to see out of, and I had cut a tiny slit to breathe through. I did not know if it would be enough. That day had started like any other day in my life. My dad was in the front garden trying to fix the lawnmower he had had forever. Experts dated this relic to the Precambrian period. My mom was standing over him. She was telling him to take the lawnmower to the junkyard and buy a new one. I couldn't actually hear her saying this, but my parents had a limited range of conversations, and the ones they had were all stuck on repeat. They are painful to listen to, but not as bad as the silences which hung over the 4 of us on the rare occasions we all sat round the same table for a meal. The 4th of the 4 was my older brother. That day, he was in the garden of the house opposite kissing his girlfriend. She lived there with her parents, who'd both gone out somewhere. I had no idea why my brother and his girlfriend insisted on subjecting other people to this hideous spectacle. It's like they were saying, "Look at us, aren't we amazing because we've got our tongues in each other's mouths?" It made me want to projectile vomit. And, meanwhile, back on home turf, Mom was wagging her finger at Dad. From experience, I knew this would be the "what would the rest of the people on the street think" tirade. She was probably objecting to the muscle vest he was wearing. NSFW alert, my dad had hairy shoulders. If the rest of the people who lived on our street had any standards whatsoever, they would be appalled by the sight of my dad in his muscle shirt. But I doubted very much they were. Me, my brother and his equally gross girlfriend were the only young people who lived on our street. Our parents were the only ones with their kids still making the nest smell of sweaty socks, deodorant, and other things which shall remain unsaid. The other adults included the couple who lived in the biggest house on the street. The man was obsessed with cleaning his car. There was washing it with water from a soapy bucket. There was polishing. There was vacuuming. This was something which began at first light and ended about the time vampires were waking up and wondering whose blood they should drink. He had little covers for his tires as well. Little covers for the seats. He once threw his shoe at a pigeon that crapped on his bonnet. The strangest thing was, he never drove the car further than to the local store to buy his newspaper and his smokes and, once a month, to do a shop at the mart. The she of this house drank. I knew this for a fact because my mom used to look over at the biggest house and say, "She'll be on her 4th G&T by now." Such a shame. My mom could wrap condemnation and pity in tight little bundles like this and throw them around all day long. Opposite the people in the biggest house, was the man with the beard. It reached down to his chest. He could have gone topless without flashing his man nipples. I don't know how long it took to grow a beard like that. From birth, presumably. His other distinguishing marks were the faded Led Zeppelin t-shirt he wore all the time and the motorbike that he would start up late at night. He would rev it, then turn it off. This drove my parents to despair. In all the time we'd lived on the street, I had only ever once seen him drive the bike away. He was gone for a whole weekend, and when he returned around midnight on the Sunday, my mom said she was going to call the police because he'd made the whole street smell of dope. I don't think she ever did. The man in the next house along was dead. He was like that for a whole week before anyone realized and they took him away. The police who called round to do the welfare check kicked his door in and it's still hanging off the hinges. Before he was dead, he was an accountant. According to my mom, he also sang in a choir before he was asked to leave. The other person on our street who was notable was the lady who lived way down at the end. She was our one-person neighborhood watch and it was her who reported the dead man to the police. She used to walk up and down with a notebook, pausing occasionally to write something down. Litter was of particular interest. And mailboxes. She did this in all weathers and had a fantastic full-body waterproof coat and a straw sun hat and a range of very practical footwear. I am amazed it took her a whole week of walking up and down to write down in her notebook, "Man at number 4 possibly dead. Call 911. Stick up new sign about dogs barking." There were, by the way, no dogs on the street. She was one troubled lady. So yes, that was us, on that ordinary day. And then the mist appeared. It was hazy wisps at first, drifting in the direction of my window. And then it started to blur the sharp corners of the rooftops, before soon obscuring them altogether. With my vantage point, I think I was the first to notice. I even beat the lady with the notebook. She was stopped in the middle of the street, now she had noticed. Her pen was poised, her notebook was open. Her mouth was open even wider, as the mist thickened and spread. It had reached my brother and his girlfriend. They were too busy being nauseating to have noticed. My mom had. She was so worried she even stopped having a go at Dad. She was shouting across to my brother, I think. I considered opening my window so I could hear what she was saying, but didn't. I guess I knew even then that there was something wrong about the mist. We didn't live by the sea. We didn't live in Victorian London and were plagued by pea supers. I'd also seen enough horror movies to know that weird mists always spelled trouble. The man in the biggest house was clearly also worried. He rushed into his garage and returned moments later with a large cover which he began to drape over his precious car. Keeping it clean was as ever his #1 priority. I could see the woman standing in the front of the window of the biggest house staring out at the mist. She had a cocktail glass in her hand. A little umbrella rested at an angle against the rim of the glass. The man with the beard had come out, presumably to get a closer look at the mist. My brother's girlfriend was the first to scream. They'd stopped kissing and she was looking at him with absolute horror on her face. I squinted and saw why. He didn't appear to have any lips. Where they should have been was 2 thin strips of raw, red, flesh. His girlfriend touched her own mouth and felt what I could now see. His lips had come off and were stuck to her lips. She screamed. The sound seemed to fill the entire street, and then all hell was let loose. My mom began running towards my brother, her arms outstretched, almost as if he was a little kid again and she wanted to scoop him up. She passed the lady with the notebook and ground to a halt, looked back. Then my mom screamed. The lady with the notebook's face had fallen off. Her skin was gone. I could see it lying like a discarded mask at her feet. The weave of her muscles remained. Enough for her expression to show the confusion and terror which must have been flooding through her. The man with the beard was the next to holler. His facial hair was littered with the remnants of his skin, which had come off. He was holding his hands up feeling his beard and they were skinless as well, each digit like something you'd see on a butcher's slab. Meanwhile the man from the biggest house was furiously trying to vacuum up pieces of skin which had fallen on the bonnet of his half-covered car. I don't know if he had realized they had come from his face. His wife was drinking from a bottle. Her skin was still in one piece. Because she'd not been touched by the mist, I realized. But what was it? Why was it doing this? I did a search for weird skin-destroying mist. Unless the mist was filled with invisible biting mites, whatever the hell they were, then the internet had proved no damn use. Then the net proved useful after all, when a news alert beeped on my phone. Chemical leak reported from local plant, it said. Residents advised to stay indoors. It was a bit late for that, for the people on my street. The lady with the notebook stood in the middle of a pile of her own skin. She was screaming about divine justice. I was hyperventilating by now. Thinking fast. Like the lady drinking at pace inside the biggest house, I was the only one who'd been indoors since the mist appeared. I didn't think I'd be safe for long, though. I was living in a family house built 20 years before I was born, not a hermetically sealed bubble. I moved away from the window, began to look around my room, then improvised a hazmat suit from things I found lying around. My hands were shaking so badly while I did this that it took an age. I was scared. Scared worse than I'd ever been in my life. But eventually I was pretty much covered from head to toe. Not knowing if it would be enough. It was around then that my dad showed a side to him none of us had ever seen before. He walked calmly out into the street and shouted, "Everyone get inside, keep your doors and windows closed. I have dialed 911 and help is on the way." He did this even though he himself was pretty much skinless and must have been in agony. Everyone listened to him. Not long after that I heard the sounds of the first sirens. Soon the street was filled with emergency vehicles, and people wearing actual hazmat suits were ushering the man from the biggest house, the man with the beard, the lady with the notebook, my parents, brother and his girlfriend into ambulances. One of the first responders was knocking on the door of the biggest house. The woman peered out at him from inside a curtain she'd wrapped around herself. She was swaying so much I think this was the only thing keeping her upright. This day, this strangest of days, was 2 months ago. Since then, the injured have been receiving fantastic medical treatment, all paid for by the local plan in return for no one going to the media. No one has ever explained what the mist was, but apparently the damage it caused can be rectified. Don't ask me how. I've been living with my aunt and uncle in another city. They're nice people, so that's okay. It's all almost fine. Only there's one thing I haven't told you about: the day the people on my street lost their skin. Shortly after, my dad yelled for everyone to get inside, but before the emergency services turned up, I left my room and went downstairs. I opened the back door and looked out at the mist lingering in the air. I pulled down the hood of my sweatshirt, I took off my shades, and put my hands on the bottom of my pillowcase mask. I wanted to remove it. I really did. Then I would undress down to my underwear. Because I wanted the mist to take my skin off. I knew it would hurt like hell, but still. I screwed my eyes up and wanted, but I couldn't do it. I was too scared. I went back indoors and back to my room. I have cystic acne. It's on my face, my chest, my back and my arms. I have to use a special cream every day but it never seems to make a difference. A lot of the time I want to cry. I never go out unless I have to and I don't have any friends. And I don't regret keeping my mask and clothes on, keeping the touch of the mist away. I will keep going and I believe that one day I'll be happy. That one day, I'll be comfortable in my skin.